I came across Big Fork Brands recently, and it's become one of those finds you actually want to tell people about, and you don't find that often. Okay. They're doing bacon sausage, plus these really solid pork jerky snacks and Chicago style sauces. Basically, upgrade anything you throw them on burgers, hot dogs, fries, throw it on there. It works.
But I bet it's packed full of junk.
Actually, it's made with clean ingredients and real care. That's small batch with no shortcuts, and people are obsessed with the flavor. You can go over to bigforkbrands.com, use our code INFOGO at checkout, and get 20% off anything on the site.
You can find the link and our code in the show notes. Welcome to the podcast. I'm William,
And I'm Kat,
and that makes this Info on the Go.
feeding your curiosity everywhere you go.
Yeah. Have you ever wondered what FIFA stands for or the World Cup? What it's all about?
Yes.
I mean, it's like the biggest game on the planet, right?
Yeah. I,
All
I
right.
don't really understand much about sports, so it's kind of been like, oh, look, soccer.
Yeah, so we are going to be talking about soccer. And you know what? Let's just jump into it, okay? So it's the final minutes of a FIFA World Cup final, right? The clock is pushed past 90 minutes, where every pass, every mistake, and every touch of the ball carries, well, the weight of history. On the field, there are 22 players, but they're not just athletes. They're representatives of an entire nation. And along the sidelines, you have coaches who stand frozen, knowing that years of preparation have come down to the seconds. In the stands, you have tens of thousands that watch with intense silence, fully aware they are witnessing something that will be remembered for generations.
But this moment stretches far beyond the stadium. In 2018, more than 1.1 billion people watched the final live. And by 2022, that number had climbed to nearly 1.5 billion viewers worldwide, making it one of the most watched events in human history. Across the globe, daily life pauses. Streets empty, businesses slow or even close. And in cities like Buenos Aires and Paris, and in countless towns and villages in between, people gather around televisions, radios, and public screens. Different languages, different cultures, but all focused on the same unfolding moment.
On the field, a single play begins to develop. A player breaks through the defense, the ball moving forward toward the goal. In a split second, everything can change. A shot, a save, or a goal that will, well, define the legacy. In that instant, one nation may erupt in celebration while another, well, just kind of falls in stunned silence. And these moments are not just about sport, they carry emotional weight tied to identity, pride, and history.
The World Cup is more than a tournament organized by FIFA. It has become a global ritual, an event where billions of people share the same emotions at the same time. And it reflects more than just a competition, it reflects the world itself with all its unity and division, its joy and heartbreak. And that leads to a deeper question. How did a simple game once played informally in fields with loosely defined rules grow into the most powerful sporting event on earth?
How? And I think we're going to get into that into this episode, right?
Yes.
All right. So before FIFA, long before it became a global spectacle, soccer, and for our friends outside of the US, we are talking about football, and but our base is mostly in the US, so we're going to call it soccer. Sorry for everyone else. But long before it became a global spectacle, right? Soccer existed in a far rougher, more chaotic form. In medieval Europe, versions of the game were played in open fields and village streets, often involving entire communities. There were just a few rules, if any, and matches could stretch for hours, sometimes turning violent. These early forms weren't about precision or strategy. They were about movement, competition, and local pride. Each region played differently. with its own customs and interpretations of what the game should be.
Now, that began to change in the 19th century, particularly in England. As industrialization brought people into cities and schools sought structured activities for students, the need for standardized rules became clear. And in 1863, the formation of the Football Association in England helped formalize the modern rules of the game, defining things like passing, fouls, and the prohibition of using hands. For the first time, soccer had a consistent identity. What had once been chaotic and local was becoming organized and repeatable.
So from there, the game, well, it started to spread rapidly beyond Britain through trade routes, colonial expansion, and migration. Soccer traveled across continents. Sailors carried it to ports, workers brought it to new countries, and schools adapted it as a simple, accessible sport. And by the late 1800s and the early 1900s, it was being played across Europe, South America, and beyond. Its simplicity, just a ball, open space, really made it easy to adapt, and its competitive nature made it easy to love.
But this rapid growth created a new problem. While soccer was being played almost everywhere, it wasn't being played the same way. Different countries had different interpretations of the rules, different governing bodies, and no unified system to organize international competition. So, matches between nations could become disputes, not just contests, because there was no single authority to settle disagreements or even standardize play.
But that all changed in 1904 when representatives from several European nations came together in Paris to form, well, FIFA. And it stands for Federation International de Football Association. Wait, that's going to be in French, isn't it?
Most definitely.
Yeah, so we're going to say de Federation.
That's as good as you're going to get,
Yeah.
folks. Neither one of us speak French, unfortunately. I can say, "Do you speak French?" in French, and that's it.
Oh, that's better
Well,
than
well, I know
FIFA.
Frere Jacques in
Yeah,
French,
okay, fair Jacques, I know that too, but
right?
their goal was ambitious. It was to create a single organization that could oversee the gameplay globally and standardize rules, eventually organize international competition. It was a bold idea, but it was built on the belief that the sport could bring nations together rather than divide them.
In those early years, FIFA was small and uncertain, operating with limited resources and influence, but it was driven by a sense of optimism that a shared game could create a common ground across borders, languages, and cultures. It was, in many ways, a fragile idea. The world at the time was defined by rivalries, empires, and rising tensions, yet within that uncertainty was a vision that through soccer, the world might find a way to connect.
So, in the early 20th century, one man began to push the idea of turning soccer into something far bigger than scattered international matches.
Okay.
So, Jules Rimet, he was a French administrator with a deep belief in the unifying power of sport. He saw what others did not, the potential for a truly global competition. At the time, international soccer, well, it just didn't exist, but it did live mostly within the framework of the Olympic Games. Olympic football tournaments had been held since 1900 and gained popularity by the 1920s, but they were limited by strict amateur rules. Many of the best players in the world, those who played professionally, well, they were excluded, which meant the competition never fully represented the highest level of play in the sport.
Reme believed the game deserved more. He envisioned a tournament that would bring together the best players from around the world, regardless of amateur status. A competition that would stand on its own, independent of the Olympics, and crown a true world champion. It was an ambitious idea, but it faced immediate resistance. Travel in the 1920s was really slow. It was expensive and very often unreliable. So, especially for teams crossing oceans, national football associations worried about costs, logistics, and whether it was even worth the risk. There was also the issue of, well, national pride. Countries were hesitant to commit to a competition where losing on a global stage could carry political and cultural weight.
But financial uncertainty added another layer of doubt. Organizing an international tournament of that scale required, well, money, infrastructure, and coordination that, well, FIFA just had never attempted before. There were no guarantees of profit, no established global audience, and no clear model to follow. So, for many, the idea seemed, well, unrealistic. Yet Remy persisted. He believed that the growing popularity of soccer and its ability to cross borders made it the right move. The turning point came in 1928 when FIFA officially voted to organize its own international tournament, separate from the Olympics. This was a decisive step that really transformed Reme's vision well into a concrete plan. And for the first time, the world would have a dedicated competition to determine the best national team on the planet. What began as an idea driven by optimism and belief, well, it was now in motion, and it was laying the foundation for what would become the World Cup.
In 1930, the vision of a global tournament became reality in Uruguay, a very small country with an outsized football reputation. Uruguay had recently won Olympic gold medals in 1924 and 1928 and was celebrating their 100 years of independence, making it both a symbolic and practical choice to host the first tournament. The government invested heavily, constructing new stadiums, including the massive Estadio
Yeah, let's go with that. Estadio.
Estadio Centenario in Montevideo.
You nailed
Wh-
it.
what language do people in Uruguay speak? South American. Okay, so that is
Spanish.
Spanish. It's still a different dialect than I would know, but Spanish nonetheless. So, specifically for the event, it was an ambitious undertaking for a country of its size, signaling that this competition was meant to be more than a simple series of matches.
Despite the significance of the moment, participation was limited. Only 13 teams entered the tournament. Seven from, well, South America, four from Europe, and two from North America. Many European nations declined to attend, largely because of the long and expensive transatlantic journey, which required weeks of travel by ship. And for those that did make the trip, the commitment was enormous, reinforcing just how uncertain and experimental the first World Cup truly was.
Once the matches began, however, it became clear that something new was taking shape. The games drew large crowds, national pride was on full display, and the stakes extended beyond sport. Each match carried a sense of identity, as teams were not just competing for victory, but representing their countries on an international stage. Politics and nationalism were already woven into the tournament's fabric, even in its earliest form.
The competition culminated in a final between Uruguay and neighboring Argentina, two fierce rivals with a deep football history, played in front of a packed stadium in Montevideo. The match was intense and emotional, reflecting both sporting excellence and national tension. Uruguay ultimately won 4-2, becoming the first World Cup champion and cementing its place in history. And there's your little factoid. Uruguay,
Factoid Uruguay won in its 100th anniversary and the first World Cup
there you go.
ever. You should put like little cheering noise in there, okay? Woo!
If I can find some, I will.
Good. Okay. Put cheering noise here.
Cheering noise. Yay.
Woo!
That's probably what you're gonna get when you go to hear it. You're gonna be driving down the road like, wow, it sounds like we're cheering. Go Uruguay. But what emerged from that tournament was more than a champion. It was, well, proof of concept. It was proof of concept because the World Cup had begun as both a sporting competition and a global spectacle, blending athletic skill with national identity and international attention. Even in 1930, it was clear that this event had the potential to grow into something far larger than anyone had ever imagined.
The rapid growth of international soccer came to an abrupt halt with the outbreak of World War II, though. What had begun as a hopeful effort to bring nations together through sport was overtaken by a conflict that divided the world on an unprecedented scale. Countries that had recently competed in the same field were now on opposing sides of a global war, and the idea of international unity through football suddenly felt distant and fragile.
The impact that it had on the World Cup, it was immediate and unavoidable. The tournament schedule for 1942 and 46, they were canceled, marking the first major interruption in the competition's history. FIFA's still relatively young organization, well, it lacked the ability to sustain the event in the face of global war. Well, stadiums that had once hosted cheering crowds were damaged or destroyed by bombings. Infrastructure across Europe and parts of Asia, well, they lay in ruins, making international travel and large-scale events nearly impossible.
And players themselves were pulled into conflict. Many left their clubs and national teams to serve as soldiers, and some never returned. Careers were interrupted or ended entirely, and the game lost a generation of talent to the realities of war. Soccer, which had begun growing as a global language, was reduced to a background memory as survival became the priority. This period really revealed just how delicate the idea of global unity through sport really was. The same nations that had come together for competition were now separated by violence and ideology. The World Cup, once a symbol of connection, became a reminder of how quickly that connection could disappear. Yet, even in its absence, the desire for international competition remained, waiting for a world stable enough to bring the game back to life.
Yeah, and that came in the 1950s. When the World Cup returned after the war, it entered a new era, one defined by growth, drama, and it was rapidly expanding to a global audience. The 1950 tournament, hosted by Brazil, marked a turning point because Brazil had built the massive Maracanã Stadium in Rio de Janeiro, expecting to celebrate a national victory in front of nearly 200,000 fans. But instead, the final match produced one of the greatest upsets in sports history. Uruguay defeated Brazil 2-1 in what became known as the Maracanazo. As a result, so shocking that it left an entire nation in stunned silence. It was a reminder that the World Cup was not just about skill, but about pressure, expectation, and the unpredictable nature of the game.
As the tournament continued through the 1950s and 60s, new legends began to emerge, none more influential than Pelé. Bursting onto the world stage as a 17-year-old in 1958, Pelé helped lead Brazil to victory and became a global symbol of the sport. His style, creativity, and success elevated soccer's appeal, turning players into international icons and inspiring future generations across continents.
At the same time, though, technology began to transform how the World Cup was experienced. The spread of television allowed matches to be broadcast beyond the stadium, bringing the tournament into living rooms around the world. What had once been an event that, well, you had to go and see it, well, was now shared by millions and eventually hundreds of millions because of TV. People were tuning in. And this shift fundamentally changed the scale of the competition, turning it into a truly global event.
The tournament itself also expanded. More teams from more regions were invited to participate, reflecting the growing popularity of soccer in Africa, Asia, and North America. The World Cup was no longer dominated by a handful of nations. It was becoming a stage for the entire world. And by the 1970s, the World Cup had evolved into something far greater than its founders had ever imagined. It was no longer just a competition to determine the best team. It had become a shared global experience where people from vastly different backgrounds could watch the same matches, celebrate the same moments, and feel connected through a single game.
Yeah, and as the World Cup grew in scale and visibility, it also became something governments could not ignore, and often something they sought to use. Hosting the tournament offered more than sporting prestige. It provided a global stage to, well, shape perception, project power, and influence how a nation was seen by the rest of the world. Infrastructure projects, grand stadiums, and carefully curated ceremonies were not just about soccer, they were about the image.
One of the most striking examples came in 1978 when Argentina hosted the World Cup under a military dictatorship. At the time, the ruling regime faced widespread accusations allegations of human rights abuses, including forced disappearances and political repression. Oof.
Mm.
Yet during the tournament, the focus shifted. The government invested heavily in presenting a polished, unified image to the international audience, using the World Cup as a form of soft power. Matches were played in packed stadiums, national pride was amplified, and Argentina's eventual victory gave the regime a moment of legitimacy and celebration on the world stage, even as controversy and criticism lingered beneath the surface.
This pattern was not isolated. Throughout the Cold War, soccer often mirrored larger geopolitical tensions. Matches between nations carried, well, symbolic weight, sometimes reflecting ideological rivalries between East and West. Victories could be framed as more than athletic success. They were seen as proof of national strength, discipline, or superiority. The pitch became a place where political narratives played out in front of a global audience, even if no official statements were ever made.
By this point, it was clear that the World Cup had evolved far beyond its original purpose. It was no longer just a competition between teams. It had become a platform where politics, identity, and a global perception intersected. The game itself remained at the center, but everything surrounding it, who hosted, who won, and how it was presented, carried meaning far beyond the final score. The World Cup, for all its excitement and unity, was never just a game.
But there is one thing about the FIFA and the World Cup: money. So, as the World Cup entered the late 20th century, a major shift began to reshape the tournament and the organization behind it. What had once been a competition driven primarily by sport and national pride, well, began to shift into something else: money, media, and global business. Sponsorship deals expanded rapidly, with multinational corporations attaching their brands to the tournament. Broadcasting rights became one of the most valuable assets in the sport. As television networks, well, they started to compete for the ability to air matches to massive international audiences. And the World Cup was no longer just watched, it was marketed, packaged, and sold as a on a global scale.
At the center of this transformation was FIFA, which evolved from a relatively modest administrative group into a financial powerhouse. Revenues surged into the billions, driven largely by television rights and corporate sponsorships. With each tournament, the stakes grew higher, not just for teams, but for advertisers, broadcasters, and host nations investing heavily for global exposure. FIFA now controlled one of the most lucrative events in the world, giving it enormous influence over the sport and its future.
And but with that growth, well, there came scrutiny. Allegations of corruption began to surface, really raising questions about how decisions were being made behind the scenes. Critics pointed to obscure bidding processes for host countries, financial mismanagement, and the lack of transparency within the organization. These concerns, well, they reached a peak during the leadership of Sepp Blatter. I'm
Mhm.
pretty sure that's Sepp.
Yeah.
Okay. He served as a FIFA president from 1998 to 2015. While he oversaw a period of massive expansion and profitability, his tenure was also marked by ongoing controversy and investigation.
Not investigation and controversy.
No, 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 no. He was not putting his hands in the cookie jar. Okay.
Nobody who racks in billions would ever put their
Okay.
hand in the cookie jar.
Maybe he was putting his hand in the cookie jar, but not taking any cookies, just licking the chocolate off his fingers from the melted chocolate chips.
Sure, sure.
Okay.
In 2015, a series of international investigations led to indictments and arrests of several high ranking FIFA officials exposing widespread corruption tied to bribery and commercial deals.
Maybe
This,
he was taking some cookies out of the cookie jar.
indeed, the cookie monster, if you will. The scandal.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Have you thought about what you're getting your mom for Mother's Day? At Cozy Earth, they have a full line of apparel: PJs, shirts, socks, You name it, they have it. And if you buy any of their bedding, they have a 100-night sleep trial and a 10-year warranty, free shipping on orders over $50 or more. And our listeners get an exclusive discount of 21% off just by using our code INFOGO at checkout. And you can do that at cozyearth.com. Find the link and the code in the show notes. If you're laying mulch, bedding animals, covering seeds, or just want your property looking right, there's one name you need to know. Irwin Farms, Middle Georgia's #1 wheat straw provider. When it comes to quality wheat straw, it matters. Clean, consistent, and ready to work because they don't cut corners, they bale it. Whether you're a homeowner, gardener, farmer, or you're just getting your hands dirty for the first time, they've got you covered. You can find the link in the show notes. Just Google Middle Georgia's #1 wheat straw provider. Either way, you'll find Irwin Farms.
Shook the organization's credibility and forced a global reckoning about how the sport was governed. Blatter himself was eventually banned from soccer related activities, symbolizing a dramatic fall for the one of the most powerful figures in the game.
But by this point, the World Cup had become more than a sporting event. It was a multi-billion-dollar enterprise operating at the intersection of sports, politics, and global business. And while the matches on the field continued to inspire and unite, well, the story behind the scenes had grown far more complicated, revealing a system where power and profit had, well, it competed with the ideas of the game that, or the foundation that was actually built from the early years. Because in the early years, it was all about bringing the nations together, for some peaceful competition and some rivalry. Now it was all about money.
At its core, the World Cup is not just a tournament, it is a reflection of identity. When national teams step onto the pitch, they carry more than tactics or skill. They carry history, pride, and a sense of belonging that stretches far beyond the game itself. For many nations, especially those with strong football traditions, the World Cup becomes one of the few moments where millions of people feel unified under a single banner.
This sense of unity becomes most visible in street celebrations around the world. Well, after major victories, cities transform almost instantly. In Buenos Aires, entire neighborhoods flooded into the streets waving flags and singing for hours after matches. In Paris, crowds gathered along major streets, turning them into rivers of celebration. Similar scenes, well, they repeat across continents, from Rio de Janeiro to Dakar to Tokyo, where strangers became temporary communities bound by a shared result of the pitch. These moments show how soccer can, well, dissolve everyday boundaries of class, language, geography, if it's only just for one night.
Equally powerful, though, are the underdog stories that define World Cup history. Time and again, smaller or less favored nations have challenged and defeated traditional soccer powerhouses. These moments resonate deeply because they disrupt expectations. They remind the world that soccer is not predetermined, and on any given day, structure and history can be overturned by determination, discipline, and belief. These surprises are often remembered long after the tournament ends, becoming part of national folklore. Be like Naruto Uzumaki and just believe in
Hmm.
yourself forever.
I don't know who that is, but okay, I believe.
Believe.
Believe it anyway.
Yes. You'd have
We
to watch Naruto to get it. But I promise you there are people that would be interested.
I'm assuming this is anime or something, right?
It is. It
All
is an
right.
anime.
I'm not into that, but okay. I mean, a lot of people are. I'm not knocking it. If that's your thing, that's your thing, right?
Yes.
But alongside those victories are the fans themselves, traveling across continents, sometimes at great personal expense, just to follow their team. Entire journeys are built around a single match or a single tournament run. Stadiums become global meeting points where cultures collide and coexist. In the stands, languages mix, traditions overlap, and rivalries are both intense and respectful. The World Cup becomes not just something watched, but something you physically experience across borders.
All of this reinforces a central truth. The World Cup functions on multiple emotional levels at once. For some, it feels like religion, ritualistic, emotional, and deeply personal. And for others, it's a festival, loud, colorful, and temporary, but unforgettable. And for nations, it is a form of identity expressed on a global stage, where success and failure are felt collectively. But in the end, the World Cup is not defined by goals or trophies. It's defined by what it triggers in people: belief, unity, pride, heartbreak, and joy shared across billions at the same time.
Billions. But in the modern era, the World Cup has entered its most expansive phase yet, both in size and influence. So for decades, the tournament featured 32 national teams. And this was a format that balanced global representation with competitive structure. But beginning with the 2026 cycle, FIFA, well, it has expanded the tournament to 48 teams. This change has brought about increased participation from regions that have historically had fewer qualification spots, especially in Africa, Asia, and parts of North America. The goal is not to make the tournament more inclusive, but it also raises questions about scale, competitive balance, and tournament length.
Alongside the expansion, technology has become a defining feature of the modern game, introducing a video assistance referee, which represents one of the most significant shifts in soccer officiating in decades. VAR allows referees to review key decisions such as goals, penalties, red cards, and mistaken identity using video replays. While it has improved accuracy and reduced certain controversies, it has also changed the rhythm of matches, introducing pauses that can heighten tension or disrupt emotional flow. It reflects a broader trend in soccer: the pursuit of precision in a sport traditionally defined by human judgment and imperfection.
I'm not a fan of that. I think it should stay with the human imperfection gives it its niche. It's kind of like in baseball where you have the ump, you don't want to get rid of that and bring in something like that, but because then you can't yell at the ump and be like, "Are you blind?" Right?
Yeah, but I can understand that it was only 11 years ago that FIFA faced all these issues, and I can imagine that they would like to just
Yeah, and then you
oh,
don't have to run the risk of the referees being paid off by one country or having one country, the referee coming from one country and they say that he's biased or something. So, okay, I
indeed,
get it. I
indeed.
get it.
Yeah.
But but the World Cup's global reach has reached unprecedented levels. Broadcast and streaming, well, they bring matches to billions of viewers across, well, nearly every country on earth. And the tournament has become one of the most widely viewed events in human history, with audiences spanning time zones, languages, cultures, all simultaneously coming together. A single final, well, it can pause daily life for a portion of the globe, portion of the population, and this really reinforces the World Cup's role on a shared international experience.
Recent tournaments have also delivered some of the most dramatic moments in the competition's history. Finals decided in extra time or penalty shootouts have created lasting memories, often defined by sudden shifts in emotion within seconds. Alongside these high stake matches, a new generation of rising stars has emerged, reshaping how the game is played. Younger players bring increased pace, technical skill, and tactical versatility, often becoming global icons almost overnight.
So now we're gonna get into how it kind of works. So as the World Cup expanded into 4018 format and countries grow in commercial and global reach, new questions about how the tournament actually works today and whether its scale is sustainable. First, let's get into how qualifying works.
Unlike the final tournament, which lasts about a month, World Cup qualification takes place over nearly 3 years and is organized by regional confederations under FIFA. Each continent runs its own qualification system. Europe hundreds of matches in group stages, with top teams earning automatic spots and playoffs deciding the rest.
In South America, a single league style table where every nation plays each other, home or away.
In Africa, multi round knockout and group systems to narrow dozens of nations down to a handful of qualifiers.
Then in Asia and North Central America, well, expanded formats due to increasing team numbers.
In Oceania, historically had fewer direct spots, now benefits from expanded access in the new 48 team system. Qualification is often as emotionally intense as the tournament itself, sometimes more, because for many nations, simply reaching the World Cup is the achievement.
Yeah. But let's get into some big controversy this year or in 2026. Early World Cups were relatively affordable and locally accessible. By the 2000s and 2010s, prices began rising due to global demand and corporate hospitality packages. In the modern tournaments, tickets have, well, they're tiered. Budget seating, which is limited availability, standard public tickets, and then you have high cost hospitality packages that run into the thousands of dollars. And so for 2026, hosted across the United States, Canada, and Mexico, well, the demand is expected to be the highest ever. So larger formats, 48 teams, more matches, higher stadium capacities, strong international travel demand, which, is all about money, right?
Yeah.
But this is raising concerns that the event is becoming less accessible to, well, the average fan, especially for those traveling internationally.
Is it getting too big? The expansion to 48 teams has sparked some debate. Supporters argue that more global representation, more opportunities for smaller nations, and increased revenue to support global soccer development. And critics argue more matches may dilute quality. Longer tournaments strain players physically, and the risk of predictable early stage mismatches. The core question, though, does expansion strengthen the World Cup or stretch it beyond its ideal size?
So then there's environmental concerns. Modern World Cups are massive logistical operations involving international flights for teams and fans, stadium construction and upgrades, energy intensive broadcasting and infrastructure, multi country hosting like, well, 2026, which is across three different nations: the US, Canada, and Mexico. And this reduces some local construction pressure, but increases travel emissions. Climate researchers and sport organizations have, well, increasingly questioned the carbon footprint of mega tournaments. This raises a tension between global celebration and environmental cost.
The World Cup has always been tied to politics, but the modern era scrutiny is stronger than ever. Issues include human rights debates surrounding host nations, labor conditions during stadium construction, decisions about awarding hosting rights, and political messaging during tournaments. Because the World Cup is watched globally, it often becomes a stage where political issues are amplified rather than separated from sport.
Will the magic last? This is the central question of the modern cup era. On one side, you have technology improves fairness, more nations participate, global audiences continue to grow. On the other hand, has it become too commercialized? Ticket prices, well, they can be out of range for the average fan. Political and ethical debates, well, they're increasingly surround the event. Yet, despite all of this, the emotion, well, it remains at the core, unchanged. A single match can still stop cities, divide nations, and unite billions at the same time. So the World Cup continues to evolve, but whether its scale strengthens or strains its identity is still an open question. And that uncertainty is exactly what makes its future so compelling.
I was looking at ticket prices.
Oh,
So, the 2026 World Cup will be hosted jointly by the United States, Canada, and Mexico, primarily because of the tournament's expansion, logistical demands, and the structure of modern football governance under FIFA. When FIFA awarded the event in 2018, it selected the United bid. over Morocco, largely due to the scale and infrastructure advantages offered by the three North American countries working together.
A major reason for the shared hosting is the expansion of the tournament from 32 teams to 48 teams. This increase means more matches, more teams, and greater demand for stadiums, training facilities, transportation systems. Hosting the tournament across a single country at this scale, well, it would be challenging to say the least. Whereas distributing games across three nations, it does make more sense and makes it a little bit easier to manage over, wide range of venues.
The United States brings extensive infrastructure, including large stadiums, originally built for American football that can be adapted for soccer. Wait, no, that's right. Okay.
Yeah, yeah, no, you're right. I got it
Sorry,
right
I
here.
totally confused myself. I was like, nope, it is talking about American football. It is making the difference itself. Anyway, Mexico adds deep soccer tradition and prior World Cup experience, having hosted the tournament in 1970 and 1986. Canada contributes modern facilities and a rapidly growing soccer culture, supported by increasing investment in professional leagues and development programs. Together, the three countries provide a balanced and already developed foundation for hosting.
Geography also plays a role in making the arrangement workable. The three countries are connected by established air routes, and the tournament is structured so that teams are grouped regionally to reduce, well, long distance traveling during the early stages. This will help limit the fatigue of the players while still allowing the event to span a large area.
There are also strategic and commercial factors. FIFA benefits from strong financial guarantees, large stadium capacities, and access to one of the world's biggest media markets in the United States. The joint bid also reduces risk by spreading responsibilities across multiple governments and organizations rather than relying on a single host nation. Overall, the decision reflects a modern shift in how the World Cup is organized. As the tournament grows in size and global reach, hosting it has become less about one country carrying the entire burden and more about regions collaborating to stage the world's largest sporting event.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to be tuning in to this year's World Cup. Kind of got into it, what was it, 4 years ago,
Mhm.
2022. It's a growing sport. It's not really understood here in the United States, and maybe we do a whole history on soccer and how it's played and stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll add that to the shopping list. But if you're tuning in to the World Cup this year and you got a pick, let us know. I mean, we're global.
I
Yeah,
was just searching through some ticket prices. I don't have that kind of ticket price money. That the average Joe definitely is not affording that.
yeah. I mean, and that's the big thing this year, the 2026 World Cup. Like third world nations that have teams in there. And I saw on the news where some of these fans were, it's a year's salary to go to a game and be able to stay in one of the hosting countries just to watch it this year. That's
Right.
crazy when it's everybody's game, when it should be achievable for everybody, is what I'm saying.
Right.
But Uruguay, the first winner of the World Cup.
Yes.
But
In its 100th anniversary.
whoever wins it this year, they deserve it. But I'm going Team USA, maybe Team Mexico because they do look really good this year. So I don't
I'm probably just gonna have fun watching how big this turns into how small it gets, if that makes any sense.
know.
Because I didn't realize it was gonna be 48 teams. That is absolutely insane.
That is. But I'm tuning in. I'm going to be watching it.
I'll keep an eye on it. I'll be honest.
Let us know if you're into the World Cup.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you would like to support this podcast, tell a friend and help get the word out.
If you would like to help support the show, you can do so at Patreon or take advantage of some of our sponsors. Either way it goes, you can find those links in the show notes.
As always, William and I want to thank you for listening.
Whether you've been with us from day one or you just tuning in, thank you.
Join the Facebook group at Info on the Go,
Over there, you can get to know Kat and myself.
or just ask us a question.
Yeah, we'll definitely answer it. But whatever you do, make sure you follow this podcast wherever wherever you're listening.
Send us some fan mail using the link in the show notes or leave a review.
Leaving those reviews really does help others find us. But if you would like, you can email Kat or myself directly at
infoonthegopodcast@gmail.com.
and all of that is in the show notes. Till next time.
Stay curious.
If your stomach's been off lately, like bloating, reflux, or just not feeling right, there's a simpler way to get back on track.
With Professor B's Digestive Aid, which is an all natural blend of pure honey and ancient apitherapy, a herb rooted in Roman tradition. You know how at least they had some things right, right? It's designed to gently support and balance your digestion.
No long ingredient list, no harsh additives, just two powerful, time tested ingredients working together. It's even the same formula used to help cancer patients manage digestive discomfort.
And right now, you can get an exclusive 10% off any product. Just use our code INFOGO at checkout.